Hello and welcome to a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, your co-host. I'm a journalist, lifelong journalist out here on the East Coast. I've produced stories for ABC News, CBS News, CNN, even covered the White House for a year for public television's nightly business report. I love having thought-provoking conversations, and that's exactly what we do here on a San Francisco Conservative. Thanks to my co-host, author David Parker, based right there in San Francisco. That is the title of his second book, A San Francisco Conservative. He is also the author of Income and Wealth and Rome 476. And you can often find his columns in the Epoch Times, Bay Area edition, as well as nationwide. And I always love our conversations. How are you, David?
I'm fine, Tom. Happy to be here.
Excellent,
How are you
excellent.
today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Here I am, a couple thousand miles away from San Francisco, but I keep hearing about San Francisco's homeless problem. I know you've written a couple essays on that topic for the Epoch Times. What are some of your latest thoughts about the homeless problem there in San Francisco?
Well, I like to think that there are certain problems we have in this country, and they continue because we don't say what they are clearly. If you really label a problem, the solution is obvious. The homeless are people who have come to lay down and die. They don't want help. They don't want social services. And maybe one or two would benefit, but out of 1,000, one or two would really benefit from social services. You can get them off homelessness. They come here to lay down and die, and it's in their behavior. They're just lying there and defecating in the sidewalk, and we do nothing about it. The ACLU says, as citizens, they are free, and that the society has no right to put them into conservatorship, take their freedom away, and they nix every attempt at San Francisco and maybe nationwide to actually do something about homelessness.
I've known you long enough. I think I can read your mind. I know that you're probably thinking, thank God for the progressives because they really want to do something about the homeless.
Yes, and that's exactly it. They really want to. Their heart is in the right place. They really care. That's what they're all about, compassion for the marginalized person, whoever they are. And their first response is to throw money at it. San Francisco has thrown as much as $1 billion a year, only to do no result and except to increase homelessness. So if you have a law, which if people come to lay down and die, the law says you can't do that on a city sidewalk where there's children walking on city benches where children are playing. I'm very sensitive to that. I have grandchildren, and you don't want them to get sick from somebody's disease. So the homeless should do what I guess the word is hobos did in the 30s and 40s. They camped at the outskirts of town. That was a kind of an honest or some integrity there. They didn't come in the middle of town to Union Square in San Francisco and just lie down on the sidewalk right in front of you, right in front of Macy's or whatever it is. That and the city should have a law. You can't do that, and we'll provide you services, and the services should be spread out, not in one little neighborhood or one location, but at the outskirts of town. There's all kinds of factories and military bases that are huge buildings that are empty. You don't have to go build concentration camps or something like that. They're there. Everybody gets a bed, and you can go do a little farming or something, but you spread them out, and then you can treat them. You can give them services, social services, and medical health care and psychological care, whatever. I'm not against that. I'm a San Francisco conservative. I'm not a right wing nut.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind, but not in the middle of town.
Yeah. Well, it does sound like there's a lot of different elements involved here in terms of, the basic survival needs, mental health, and so on. And I guess we can give the conservatives or the progressives rather some credit because they're very good at handling challenges with nuance and complexity And maybe that's what we need here. Would you agree?
Well, and you're feeding me a response that you know I'm going to give you. The answer is no. That when we need some, what I call black and white, is a homeless, is he laying down trying to die? Yes. It's not, oh, he had a bad childhood or he made a few mistakes. A few is an understatement. You don't become homeless because you made a few mistakes. You made a lot of mistakes for a long period of time, and then you lost everything. You don't just lose your home and all your belongings, everything all at once. It doesn't happen that fast. You maybe you get onto drugs and you lose control, but it still doesn't happen that fast. So you label the problem. It's black and white. Do we have a law that says you can't lay down and die, or do we not have a law? And the moment we do not have a law. The nation mostly does not have a law about just laying down and dying on the sidewalk. They'll pick you up and they'll give you emergency help, an emergency hospital. They'll give you a detox thing, and it costs money. And everybody knows they'll be back out in the street within a few weeks. That's not solving a problem. That's just what progressives do: spend money, throw money, and walk away.
Yeah, yeah. One point you make in your latest essay about the homeless crisis is you remind us that we are part of nature. Why is that important?
Well, there are no species in nature where one member tells another member what to do. That's a good example for human beings. Why is anybody telling somebody else what to do or what not to do? It's not necessary. It's encoded. Morality, for example, is encoded in our genes. The pathology gene has been more or less rooted out. One in a million might be a crazy, dangerous person. So if you live in a population of 10 million, there's 10 people walking around who might be killers. That's a lot of people, but that's life. So, all species, the parents will show their young what to do. They'll let them play and tumble with each other, and then set them on their way. And human beings, we nurture our kids longer and longer, and then we start making laws about, well, in an un-Darwinian sense, if those people who can't make it, we're going to protect you, and pretty soon we're protecting that basis, that line for protection gets higher and higher and higher. Pretty soon we're protecting everybody from everything. We can't draw a line where we can't put any black and white in this, and everything is nuanced. Every person is different.
Yeah. Well, good point. I tell you what, let's take a break for a moment and pick up on this in just a minute. I want to remind everybody that this is a San Francisco Conservative on KSFO Radio. I'm Tom Martin, journalist out here on the East Coast, speaking with author David Parker right there in San Francisco. David is the author of Income and Wealth, a San Francisco Conservative, and most recently, Rome 476. And we'll be back in just a moment.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Hello, and welcome back to a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, journalist out here on the East Coast. with my co-host, author David Parker, right there in San Francisco on KSFO radio here, a San Francisco conservative. David is the author of 3 great books, Income and Wealth, a San Francisco conservative, and Rome 476. We were just talking about one of David's recent essays in the Epoch Times, where his essays often appear. This one focuses on the homeless crisis there in San Francisco. And one of the points there, David, was again, like you said, we can thank our progressive brothers and sisters for their good intentions. They want to make a positive difference when it comes to homelessness, but there's hidden costs there, right?
The biggest hidden cost, and progressives don't want to believe it, is that all taxes are paid for by the middle class. We're a middle class nation, and we're a progressive nation by and large. We're basically a moderate nation. You wouldn't know it by looking at Congress, but we are a moderate nation. We're not split like the Congress is split. But we see somebody who needs help, and everybody, it's an American characteristic, we want to help. And the difference between conservative and liberal is the conservative says there are organizations, private organizations, the Red Cross, the YMCA, Salvation Army. These are all private groups who have historically helped the less fortunate. And we have some property taxes. We can pay a little bit for some social services, for emergency hospital care. And a liberal would say these are too important to be left to the market. And this is a good use of government to step in and pay for these things. And we're just going to raise taxes on the rich. That's what plenty of politicians say. And you can't tax the poor, obviously, but you can't tax the rich. The rich have all read Robin Hood when they were a kid. I read it.
Yeah.
You can't go after them. They know you're coming. They know it years in advance. And even if they're really have compassionate, a rich person, like a Hollywood actor, they're compassionate rich people. Their accountants aren't. Their accountants set up so they can talk all that talk, but they're not paying any tax either. So it's really hypocritical. And the way that works, if you want to know, is that the rich have income producing assets. And you can not only depreciate them, but the interest expense on the loans that finance those income producing assets, that is a tax deduction. And whenever you have too much cash flow, you increase the value of the loan on your property such that you're always showing zero net income. On your tax return, you can be audited and the government has nothing to say. Yes, you had a big loss this year. Yeah, no food on the table in our house. So the rich are not paying taxes. And so the middle class are paying for it and they don't see it. But our taxes are so high and we're so used to it that it's a hidden cost. Nobody's complaining.
Yeah. Well, seems to me that out here, I mean, I'm in Connecticut, but not too far from New York City, the boroughs of New York City, and one of the political leaders there these days, as I'm sure you've heard her name, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, and when I hear her interviewed, again, she sounds very compassionate and is full of good intentions and so on. But what you're saying here is that by implementing all these costly programs, she's really piling it on the backs of the middle class. And when I think of young people, my children are in their early 20s now. They haven't started looking to buy a house anywhere or anything like that. But if you're saddling the middle class with debt like this, saddling our nation with debt like this, it seems like it'd be very hard for young people like that to get a start.
Yeah. I talked to a person in business once who was very young, and he says he's saving to buy a home, but he's contributing 15% of his income to Social Security, 7.5 on his payroll and 7.5 the employer is paying, but they would go to him otherwise. That's his money. That's 15%, and and plus income tax, and then there's he's paying for Medicare, and the tax rate is so high because we have a huge debt, and the debt that's servicing social services like Social Security and Medicare is about 900 billion, something like that. And you divide that by 150 million voters, which is like half the people who are voting, who are paying taxes. That's about $6,000 a person.
Mm.
A person, if you're a family, it's $12,000, and you're paying another 15% for Social Security and Medicare, and you're paying for private schools also for your children nowadays, because the public schools have deteriorated so badly. Unless you're lucky to be in a city that has a few, and your kids got into them. If not, even the poorest people are sending their children to private schools. So you're paying $30,000 a year, a young person, hidden tax, more or less.
Yeah. And you started out, from your early days as a public school teacher, where I'm sure you weren't making a great fortune, but you became an investor early on and have become very successful and prosperous doing that. And it would just seem if young people today had those thousands of dollars still to work with, they could be investing as well, and it'd be a very different picture, right?
Even a compromise, for example, until you're 30, you can keep your money, provided you're putting it, or you put it in, but you can take it out to make a purchase for a down payment. You can pull out all your Social Security to make a one-time purchase of a single-family home. So when you retire, that home is paid off. And then from 30 on, you start. And if you don't do it, and you just live on your Social Security, that's all right. But you're making it hard.
Yeah, no, I like that suggestion. Great. Well, again, I encourage people to check out David's books. They're Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. You can read about them on his website, davidparkeressays.com, and his great essays in the Epoch Times. And we will be back for more conversation in just a moment.
In the heart of the vibrant city by the bay, meet a voice that's challenging the status quo. David Parker, author of A San Francisco Conservative and Rome 476. David Parker, a true San Franciscan with a conservative vision for the future, is a voice that resonates with our nation's founding fathers. Freedom from government, not with government. For 40 years, he taught in San Francisco's inner city schools, acquired a large real estate portfolio, and worked as a professional musician. The Dave Parker Sextet performs every week. It's time for a fresh perspective, one that values fiscal responsibility, individual responsibility. David Parker is not only an academic, his thumb is on the pulse of the economy. He brings real solutions to all the problems affecting our nation. Learn more at davidparkeressays.com and get a free chapter to any of his books, A San Francisco Conservative, Rome 476, and Income and Wealth. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Hello, and welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, journalist out here on the East Coast, speaking with my co-host, author David Parker, right there in San Francisco on KSFO radio. And we were talking about basically the hidden cost of progressivism, full of good intentions, but there's some massive debt that's really being saddled on all of us that comes along with that. And let's drill down a little bit, David, to some specific programs. The first one that comes to mind for me is Social Security. What are your thoughts?
Well, if government gets involved, it has to be sloppier than if the market got involved. So they're taking 15%, but that money is not invested. When Social Security became a law, I think 1935, they did not want Congress to have that money to play with. So people working were paying for those who were in retirement. There was nothing invested. The money in, money out. It's more perverse than that, because in 1935, the average age was like 60. And so retirement for Social Security was 65. They gambled that they'd never have to pay hardly anything for this whole
Even
thing.
the life expectancy was shorter then.
Yeah, it was. And then minorities even live less than the majority people.
Mhm.
So that was a very, very perverse. And then it was in the Great Depression, so they thought they would help some people. Not one payment went out till about 1941. Nobody was helped. And then we have a system, and now it's just running along. Government is running it, so 15% is what we need. But 10% would be fine. If you're making 50,000, 10% is 5,000 a year. But if you invest that in a treasury right now, which is paying 5%, compounded monthly after 40 years, that's about 600,000. You retired, you'd have a 600,000 in your bank account. But if you waited 10 more years, 50 years, that 600,000 jumps to 1,000,001.
Mm.
You have 1,000,001 in your bank account. You could put off retirement, or some compromise in the middle.
So by committing all of us taxpayers to some exorbitant programs, they're taking that opportunity away from a lot of people.
Right. When I talked earlier, it's about $6,000 to pay the debt on Social Security and Medicare, which is paid for by borrowing. It's not paid for like it should be. That's why we have a huge national debt. I didn't make that clear. And so that has to be paid. And my book, Rome 476, I say that Rome fell and Western civilization fell in 476. The Huns came in and with sledgehammers, not swords, and smashed Rome to dust, smithereens. And the Roman soldiers, the largest military in the world, sat there and watched, didn't lift a finger to protect the beautiful city of Rome. And why? They hadn't been paid. Why? All tax revenue, and there was a lot of tax revenue, went to service interest on the debt. Nothing was left for primary services, including the military. And that's how close we are. We're not going to fall, but that's how close we are. That's the reason I put the Colosseum on the cover of my book, Rome 476.
Wow. Yeah.
A little reminder there.
Great warning sign.
The hidden costs, yeah, of progressivism is what that's a reminder of.
Yeah. And can you touch on some other areas that again, it's an election year. Maybe people can wake up a little bit to these hidden costs and demand some change at long last.
Well, a politician his job is to win. That's the only thing a politician is, to stay in office, and they will say what they think will get them the vote. And if the public is not too well educated in this field, they're not going to bring it up. Nobody's going to bring up the fact that this is all paid for by borrowing, and that the middle class is paying for it all. That's not going to work. In fact, in one sense, Donald Trump's first election, he was saying to the middle class, "You're being neglected, Why don't you vote for me?" So in that sense, that's a wake-up call. He's saying it again now too.
Yeah. And it sounds like certain, if we broke down, the different populations who voted for Joe Biden 4 years ago, the African American community, the Latino community, and so on, it sounds like a lot of them are defecting. What do you make of that?
That is one of the greatest arrogances of the Democratic Party and progressives, is they think that since their heart is in the right place and they care about the less fortunate, the least they can do is vote for them, when in fact George W. Bush, before he was president, he was governor of Texas 2 whole terms, and he defeated a very popular candidate, Ann Richards.
Mm-hmm.
moderate and strong and a woman, and everybody liked her. He announced to the Latin voters, the Democrats are just using you. You're a conservative population. You're patriotic, for one. Democrats are not patriotic. You're patriotic, and you're church going. And why are you voting for them? And he did his whole campaign in Spanish, fluent Spanish, and he won. He beat a popular person and became president under the same platform. Why are conservatives voting for progressives?
Yeah.
And blacks and Latins are generally a conservative culture, generally.
So over, again, we're in election year this year. Do you see this trend increasing, that these populations will notice it's not just a knee-jerk reaction to vote Democratic? They're
Yes,
reconsidering.
it'll go in spurts, but even if Joe Biden wins, that momentum has started. Within 30 years, the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the president will all be Republican or conservative. The
Wow.
Democratic Party will still be there, a conscience to the nation. Don't forget the less fortunate, fine, but they won't be in power because everyone will have realized we're just paying for it, and the money, and they're not solving the problems. The problems this nation has, we've had now for a long time, and neither party. That's another reason Donald Trump was elected. The polls showed Hillary 90%, but when they got in the booth, they voted for him because everybody realized that Democrats are not solving and have no intention of solving the problems the nation cares about.
Yeah,
No
good point to end on in this conversation. I just want to thank everybody for joining us on A San Francisco Conservative. Thank you, David. Great to be with you. And certainly encourage everybody to visit David's website, davidparkeressays.com. You can read about his 3 books, Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. You can download a free chapter from A San Francisco Conservative. And also, that's a great way for you to contact us. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. So again, thank you, David.
Sure, that was great. Thank you, Tom.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.